In the dense, shadowy woods beyond a small city, there lived a man known only in whispers, a phantom called the Nocturne. His name was long forgotten, if it was ever known at all. By day, his presence was a mere suggestion, a dark shape flitting through the trees, barely discernible from the twisted trunks and dense underbrush. But as dusk fell and night descended, the Nocturne emerged. His eyes gleamed with a malevolent hunger, and his movements were swift and silent. Cloaked in rags that seemed woven from the night itself, he came forth from his woodland lair, driven by an insatiable thirst for terror. The Nocturne's first victim was a young woman named Clara. She was walking home one night after a late shift at the diner when she felt it, a cold, prickling sensation at the back of her neck. She quickened her pace, the streetlights offering little comfort. Suddenly, the lights flickered and died, plunging the street into darkness. Clara turned, her breath catching in her throat. There, at the edge of the last pool of lamplight, stood a figure. Tall, gaunt, and utterly still, he watched her with eyes that seemed to bore into her soul. She ran, her footsteps echoing in the empty street. She could hear his pursuit, a soft, relentless whisper of movement. She screamed for help, but the night swallowed her cries. When they found her the next morning, she was a lifeless husk, her face frozen in a mask of terror, eyes wide open, as if still seeing the horror that claimed her. Panic spread through the city. The mayor imposed a curfew, and as night fell, the streets became ghostly silent. Doors were locked, windows shuttered, and prayers were whispered into the dark. But the Nocturne was undeterred. He thrived on their fear, savoring the electric charge of their dread. He began to stalk the city with increasing boldness, his attacks becoming more frequent, more brutal. One night, he set his sights on a young boy named Tommy. Tommy, curious and brave, had snuck out of his house to explore the night, heedless of the stories that had paralyzed the town with fear. He wandered to the edge of the woods, where the shadows seemed to writhe and pulse with a life of their own. As he ventured deeper, he saw them, eyes, countless eyes, watching him from the darkness. A twig snapped behind him, and he spun around, his heart hammering in his chest. The Nocturne loomed over him, a towering figure of nightmares. Tommy's scream was cut short as a cold hand clamped over his mouth. The Nocturne's breath was a fetid whisper in his ear, his voice like the rustling of dead leaves. "Fear the night, little one, for it is mine." Tommy was never seen again. His disappearance sent shockwaves through the community. Desperation gripped the city as more and more people fell victim to the Nocturne's nocturnal hunts. The police were powerless, their searches through the woods fruitless and fraught with their own terrors. Those who ventured too far into the forest returned as hollowed shells of their former selves, their minds shattered by the horrors they had glimpsed. One moonless night, the city reached a breaking point. A group of brave men, armed with torches and makeshift weapons, decided to confront the Nocturne in his own domain. They marched into the woods, their determination faltering with every step. The darkness seemed to swallow their light, and the silence pressed down on them like a physical weight. Suddenly, the shadows exploded with movement. The Nocturne was upon them, a whirlwind of claws and teeth. The men fought valiantly, but they were no match for the creature of the night. One by one they fell, their screams echoing through the trees. Morning came, and the city awoke to a new horror. The bodies of the fallen men were found at the edge of the woods, arranged in a grotesque tableau, their eyes wide with the same unending terror that had claimed Clara and Tommy. The message was clear. The night belonged to the Nocturne, and any attempt to defy him would be met with merciless retribution. The city became a place of fear and despair, its streets deserted as soon as the sun dipped below the horizon. Whispers of the Nocturne's name continued to haunt the townsfolk, a reminder that in the dark woods just beyond their homes, an ancient terror waited. And every night, as the shadows lengthened and the moon rose high, the Nocturne would emerge, a specter of nightmare to claim his prey.